What if I told you that the most powerful anti-aging treatment, or like the ultimate cure for hair loss and fundamental pelvic health issues, aren't sitting on a shelf in some pharmaceutical lab?
Right.
What if they are, like right at this very second, flowing quietly through your own veins?
I mean, it sounds like a premise from a near-future sci-fi novel, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
But the reality is, we are actively living through one of the most significant paradigm shifts in modern medical history right now.
It's massive.
It is. The traditional model, where a doctor uses a scalpel to cut away a problem or inserts a foreign synthetic implant to cover it up, it's rapidly becoming obsolete in a lot of fields.
Well, welcome to another deep dive. Whether you're, catching up on the absolute bleeding edge of biotechnology or you're just insanely curious about where human health is heading, we have a massive stack of sources to explore with you today.
And it's an incredibly eclectic mix we've got today.
Oh, absolutely. We've got medical aesthetic clinic, FAQs,
Yeah.
urology and women's health clinic brochures, and some truly groundbreaking UK regulatory policy updates from the MHRA.
Yeah, the regulatory stuff is fascinating. But our mission today is really to map out this transition toward what the medical community calls regenerative medicine.
Right.
In plain English, that just means using the body to heal the body.
Which is such a wild concept to actually put into practice.
It is.
Yeah.
We're entering an era where your own harvested cells and highly advanced energy devices are doing the heavy lifting. It's fundamentally changing how we approach everything from the aesthetics of your face to your intimate functional health.
And just as importantly, we're going to look at the regulatory scramble happening behind the scenes to try and keep up with all these innovations. So let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
The foundation of this entire shift seems to revolve around one specific word that pops up in, almost every single clinic brochure we reviewed.
Autologous.
Exactly. Autologous. The idea being that you yourself are the medicine. And the most famous example hitting the mainstream right now is platelet-rich plasma, or PRP.
Right, the vampire facials and all that.
Yeah. I know it involves blood, but how does taking my own blood actually heal anything?
The mechanism is actually quite elegant. When you go into a clinic for PRP, they aren't introducing a foreign chemical at all.
Okay.
They just draw a small vial of your blood, exactly like a standard physical at the doctor's office. They take that vial and place it into a centrifuge.
That's the machine that spins it really fast. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It spins the blood at an incredibly high velocity. And the physical force of that spinning separates the heavier red blood cells at the bottom from the lighter straw-colored liquid at the top.
Gotcha.
That liquid is your plasma. And because of the spinning process, it becomes densely packed with your body's platelets.
Okay, so platelets are they're the microscopic cell fragments that usually rush to the scene of a scraped knee to stop the bleeding. Right.
Right, they do form clots, but their job goes far beyond just acting as a microscopic plug. Platelets are essentially microscopic cargo ships packed with growth factors.
Oh, interesting.
So when this highly concentrated plasma is injected back into a specific area of your body, say your scalp, for instance, it acts like a massive biological flare gun.
A flare gun.
Yeah, it signals your local dormant stem cells to wake up, migrate to the injection site, and immediately begin regenerating surrounding tissue and forming new blood vessels.
Wow. And the data on this is just wild. The sources from Rejuven's clinic, which they focus heavily on hair restoration in the UK, show how highly regulated this is.
Very regulated.
Right. They operate under the Human Tissue Authority and the MHRA. But what really jumped out at me was the safety profile they reported.
Yeah, because Rejuven's utilizes what are called medical-grade closed systems. They specifically use systems like Magellan TroPRP and Angel Arthrex.
Which means what exactly?
Because these are closed loops, meaning the blood is never exposed to the open air of the room, the infection rate for PRP hair restoration is under 0.1%.
That is incredibly low.
It is. And because the treatment utilizes nothing but your own biology, you completely eliminate the risk of systemic drug interactions.
So no allergic reactions.
Exactly. You don't have to worry about an allergic reaction or how it might interact with, say, your daily blood pressure medication, because it's literally just your own concentrated healing factors being redeployed.
It's like farm-to-table dining, but for your biology.
I like that. Farm-to-table biology.
You're bypassing the synthetic pharmaceutical factories entirely and just recycling the body's own premium building materials.
Right.
We're already seeing clinics take this basic concept and upgrade it, right?
Oh, definitely.
If you look at the materials from SE1 Medical Aesthetics in London, they've moved past just spinning blood. They're using a protocol called Cephaline, which takes this autologous idea and harvests it from fat.
The Cephahair and Cephafiller protocols are fascinating. Instead of drawing blood from your arm, the clinician harvests a very small amount of your adipose tissue, your body fat.
Usually from the thigh, I think the source said.
Yeah, usually the outer thigh under a local anesthetic. Body fat is actually an absolute gold mine for regenerative cells.
Really? Why fat?
Because adipose tissue requires a massive blood supply to survive, and wherever you have a dense network of blood vessels, you have a high concentration of stem cells.
Oh, okay, so they're mining the fat for the stem cells.
They isolate what is called the stromal vascular fraction, or SVF.
SVF.
Right. The SVF is the cellular soup that remains after you wash away the actual fat cells. It is incredibly dense with adult stem cells.
Wow.
So they take that purified mixture and re-inject it to naturally rejuvenate skin on the face or to stimulate deeply dormant hair follicles on the scalp.
So if we can harvest our own fat to rebuild the structural matrix of our face, and it looks completely natural because it literally is natural. I mean, I have to wonder about the traditional synthetic fillers people have been using for decades.
Right, the standard hyaluronic acid gels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Are those headed for the medical scrap heap?
Well, they are facing serious competition. I mean, synthetic fillers are excellent at occupying space.
Like blowing up a balloon.
Exactly. If you want instant dramatic volume in your cheekbones today, a synthetic filler will do that. But they're inert. They just sit there.
They don't do anything else?
No, they do not actively heal or change the underlying health of the tissue. Autologous treatments like Cephaline might not give you that instant puffed up volume, but they are dynamically altering the biological age of the tissue over time.
Which is what people really want.
Right. For patients who want long-term, undetectable natural results, using your own stem cells is rapidly becoming the gold standard over synthetic gels.
Okay, so if we're spinning blood and harvesting fat to grow hair and plump up cheeks, the natural question is how else this regenerative science is being applied.
Yes, and this is where it gets really important.
Because reading through these sources, the tech is moving far beyond cosmetic vanity projects. It's bleeding into highly functional, life-changing applications, particularly in women's intimate health.
Which is an area of medicine that has been historically overlooked and, frankly, severely under-researched.
Totally.
For decades, women dealing with postpartum trauma or postmenopausal pelvic health issues were routinely dismissed.
It's just part of getting older.
Exactly. They were told discomfort was just a normal part of aging, or they were offered highly invasive surgeries and systemic hormone pills. Regenerative science is finally providing functional alternatives.
Yeah, I was reading through the materials provided by Tower Urology regarding a treatment called the O-Shot.
Ah,
It uses the exact same PRP process we just discussed, drawing and spinning the blood, but the concentrated plasma is injected into the O-spot.
right, which is a collection of structures that activate the female orgasm system.
Right, and the injection triggers the release of 7 different distinct growth factors into that highly specific area.
And the clinical results observed for conditions like anorgasmia, which is the inability to orgasm low libido, and dyspareunia, which is chronic painful intercourse, are staggering.
That's amazing.
It is physically regenerating the vascular tissue and nerve endings in that area.
And it goes way beyond sexual function into fundamental plumbing and pelvic health, right?
It does.
The data from the American Board of Cosmetic Gynecology and the Women's Health Clinic shows PRP is now a frontline treatment for urogynecological conditions. We're talking about things like stress urinary incontinence, vesicovaginal fistulas, and cystocele repairs.
Right.
But how does injecting liquid blood plasma into the pelvic region fix a structural issue like urinary incontinence?
It all comes down to collagen.
Collagen, really?
Yeah. The pelvic floor and the various ligaments that physically hold the bladder in place rely heavily on collagen for their tensile strength. As estrogen levels plummet during menopause, that collagen degrades. The ligaments become lax, and that laxity leads to incontinence.
Oh, I see.
The PRP injections physically stimulate localized neocollagenesis.
Which is the creation of new collagen.
Exactly. The growth factors command the local cells to manufacture fresh, thick collagen fibers. It physically strengthens and thickens those supporting ligaments and the vaginal walls.
Giving the bladder the structural hammock it needs to function properly again.
Without surgery.
That is incredible.
Ah.
But the sources also detail that it's not just fluids being injected. Clinics are using energy-based devices as an alternative to PRP.
Yes, the lasers.
Things like the Mona Lisa Touch from Truth Skin Clinic
Yeah.
or the new V laser. These use fractional CO2 or erbium lasers, inserted via a sterile probe, to heat the vaginal tissue to exactly 40 to 45 degrees Celsius to trigger that same collagen production.
Right.
Wait, 45 degrees Celsius? That's over 113 degrees Fahrenheit.
It sounds high, I know.
You're talking about practically cooking delicate internal tissue. That sounds like a severe burn risk and incredibly painful. How on earth is this considered a safe, zero downtime procedure?
That is the exact reaction most people have when they hear the temperatures involved. The secret to the safety profile is the word fractional.
Fractional.
The laser device is not acting like a blowtorch, carpet bombing the entire surface area with heat. It delivers precise, microscopic columns of laser energy into the tissue.
So like tiny dots.
Exactly. Imagine a tiny grid of microscopic pinpricks of heat. The absolute key is that the tissue surrounding each one of those microcolumns is left completely untouched.
Ah, so you aren't burning the whole area. The healthy, unheated tissue acts like a biological reservoir to instantly speed up the healing of those tiny microinjuries.
That is the mechanism perfectly explained. The targeted heat is just enough to cause a mild thermal injury response.
To wake things up.
Right. This wakes up the local fibroblasts, which are the specific cells responsible for secreting collagen proteins, and forces them into overdrive. But because it's fractional, the healing is incredibly rapid, usually requiring absolutely no anesthesia.
Wow. And the medical importance of this for certain demographics, it cannot be overstated.
Not at all.
These are 15 to 30-minute non-surgical procedures. If you are a breast cancer survivor or an oncology patient whose cancer is hormone receptor positive, you cannot safely take systemic hormone replacement therapy.
Right, because doing so could quite literally feed the cancer.
Exactly. For those women, these lasers and localized PRP treatments are often their only safe, viable option for restoring intimate functional health.
It represents a massive leap forward in the standard of care. We are giving a quality of life back to patients who previously had to simply suffer in silence because modern medicine had nothing safe to offer them.
It's just brilliant. So we have this targeted energy and regenerative fluid working internally to rebuild ligaments and tissue. If we zoom out to the broader clinical aesthetics industry, they're using these exact same biostimulating concepts to sculpt the entire face and body, completely bypassing the operating room.
Oh, the aesthetics industry has completely co-opted these regenerative principles. Take the face, for example. Bloom Aesthetics details a technology called HIFU, or High-Intensity Focused Ultrasound.
HIFU.
Yeah, where the Mona Lisa touch use light to create fractional heat. HIFU uses sound waves. It completely bypasses the surface of the skin.
Sound waves.
The sound waves travel harmlessly through the outer layers and converge deep underneath, targeting a very specific layer known as the SMAS.
The SMAS. That's the superficial musculoaponeurotic system.
Nice pronunciation.
Thank you. That is the exact same deep, fibrous tissue layer that plastic surgeons physically slice into, pull, and stitch tight during a traditional surgical facelift, isn't it?
It is the foundational scaffolding of the face. So instead of cutting the skin to manually pull the SMAS tight, HIFU converges focused sound energy to heat that specific layer.
Which tightens it.
Exactly. That heat causes the fibrous tissue to instantly contract and tighten, effectively lifting the face naturally from the inside out.
And for the body, you have devices like the MS Skull PT Pro 04.
Yeah, that one is intense.
This uses Hytham high-intensity focused electromagnetic energy. It essentially acts as a massive magnet that bypasses your brain's motor neurons and forces your muscles into what they call supramaximal contractions.
Right.
You literally lie on a bed with these paddles strapped to your stomach, and the electromagnetism forces the muscle to contract at a rate and intensity that is biologically impossible to achieve by lifting weights in the gym.
It builds dense muscle fiber and burns the surrounding fat simultaneously in a 30-minute session.
It's cheating.
We're actively using the laws of physics-focused electromagnetism and concentrated sound waves to force the human body into a state of hyperregeneration.
And the evolution of injectables follows this exact same path, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We discussed how traditional hyaluronic acid fillers just sit there taking up space. Now we are seeing the rise of biostimulators.
Yes.
The classic example in our stack of sources is Sculptra. It is formulated from polylactic acid. It looks like water when it goes in. It gives you zero instant volume.
Nothing on day one.
Right. Instead, over the course of 8 to 12 weeks, those acid particles act as a deliberate irritant beneath the skin. It annoys the tissue into building a massive, thick collagen matrix.
It does.
But there is a huge catch for the patient. which I found so interesting. You have to follow this strict 5-5 of 5 rule.
Oh, patient compliance is absolutely mandatory with Sculptra. The 5-5-5 rule means the patient must aggressively massage the treated area for 5 minutes, 5 times a day, for 5 straight days following the injection.
Which sounds incredibly tedious. Why is that physically necessary?
Well, because if you just inject the polylactic acid and leave it alone, the body might build collagen aggressively around one specific clump of particles, creating a visible hard nodule under the skin.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah. By massaging it deeply 25 times over the first 5 days, you are physically forcing those microscopic particles to disperse evenly throughout the tissue. This ensures the new collagen grows in a smooth, uniform, foundational matrix.
Makes sense. Contrast that with something like Profhilo, which the sources note is entirely different.
Very different.
Profhilo uses one of the highest concentrations of hyaluronic acid on the market, but it's not cross-linked like a traditional filler.
Right.
Cross-linking is the chemical process that turns liquid hyaluronic acid into a stiff gel that can hold a shape like a cheekbone. Because Profhilo lacks that cross-linking, it has the consistency of warm honey.
It just flows.
Yeah, and it is injected using a very specific 5-point BAP technique, bioaesthetic points.
The BAP technique is anatomically engineered. The practitioner injects the fluid into 5 specific points on each side of the face that are specifically chosen to maximize the spread of the fluid while completely avoiding major blood vessels and nerve branches.
So smart.
And because it isn't cross-linked, it doesn't stay in a lump. It actively disperses beneath the skin, deeply hydrating the tissue and stimulating elastin production as a bioremodeling agent.
You know, I like to think of it like landscaping.
Okay, let's hear it.
Profhilo is like installing a deep underground irrigation system. It doesn't change the physical topography of your yard, but it deeply hydrates the soil from beneath, so everything looks incredibly lush and glowing.
That's a good way to put it.
And Sculptra, on the other hand, is like planting actual seeds. You don't see any change on day one, but eventually those seeds grow into a thick structural root system that physically holds the yard in place.
Spot on. And because you are just hydrating that soil, Profhilo doesn't require that aggressive 5-5-5 massage to spread it out. It naturally flows through the tissue on its own.
Right.
So one acts as a pure tissue hydrator, the other is a heavy-duty structural builder.
And the consumer demand for these tweakments, as they call them, is astronomical. There's a fascinating detail in the materials from SE1 Medical targeting the busy London city worker.
Oh, the Dermafrac.
Yeah. They offer a 175-pound Dermafrac 4-in-1 facial. It combines microdermabrasion, microneedling, and deep serum infusion. The clinic noted that this specific treatment is so popular that they literally had to purchase 3 separate, highly expensive machines just to handle the volume of corporate group bookings they were receiving on a daily basis.
I mean, the market has spoken. People want the biological upgrade, but they flat out refuse to accept the surgical recovery time.
Exactly. Which brings us to the massive elephant in the room.
Here we go.
We are talking about lasers cooking tissue, electromagnetism overriding motor neurons, injecting acid to irritate the skin, and harvesting stem cells from fat.
It's a lot.
How do government regulators actually ensure any of this is safe when the science is evolving at light speed?
It is the ultimate headache for regulatory bodies worldwide right now. In the UK, the absolute baseline for any clinic performing these advanced procedures is CQC registration.
The Care Quality Commission.
Yes. That is the legal separator between a casual high street med spa and a genuine medical facility. CQC clinics are subjected to brutal clinical governance.
Like what?
They must have emergency anaphylaxis protocols, constant medical oversight, and hospital-grade infection control.
Okay, good to know. But the truly wild regulatory updates in our stack come from the MHRA, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency.
Oh, they are making moves.
They are literally rewriting the rules of drug and therapy development as we speak. The first major update is their aggressive policy push to phase out animal testing.
Which is a monumental shift in pharmacology. The MHRA is championing what they call the 3 Rs, replace, reduce, refine.
Right.
For the first time, they are actively accepting and encouraging data derived from non-animal methods.
But how do you test a drug without an animal?
Well, they are relying on in silico methods, which are immensely powerful supercomputer simulations of human biology.
Wow.
But more impressively, they are utilizing microphysiological systems, colloquially known as organs on a chip.
Organs on a chip, like a computer chip.
No, they are not silicon computer chips. They are clear, flexible polymer blocks about the size of a USB drive that contain tiny microfluidic channels.
Okay.
Scientists line these channels with living human cells, like human lung cells or liver cells, and then pump fluid and air through them to mechanically simulate a human heartbeat and breathing.
That is insane.
It physically recreates the environment of a human organ in a plastic block. By the end of 2026, the MHRA is introducing a new framework to pre-review what's called Module 4 of marketing authorization applications.
And what's Module 4?
Module 4 is the section where safety data lives, and they are specifically streamlining this for drugs developed entirely without animal studies.
Wait, hold on. If we completely ditch animal testing and rely on a USB-sized plastic block of cells, how do we actually guarantee these novel drugs won't cause catastrophic systemic failures when they are finally injected into a living, breathing human being during clinical trials?
Well, the MHRA is very aware of that risk, and their stance is highly nuanced. They are not advocating for a blind blanket ban on animal testing. They differentiate based on the novelty of the drug. If a pharmaceutical company is developing a generic drug or a product that interacts with a well-recognized pharmacological target, meaning the scientific community already knows exactly how that specific chemical behaves in the human body, then running it through a mouse is cruel, redundant, and scientifically unnecessary.
So if the trail is already blazed, we don't need the animal to walk it again.
Precisely. However, for highly novel pharmacological actions drugs that are doing something entirely unprecedented in the human body, the MHRA still demands incredibly robust, undeniable safety data.
So they still use animals for those.
Usually, yes. If a company wants to bypass animal testing for a truly novel drug, their human-relevant non-clinical data, those organs on a chip, must comprehensively prove safety across multiple biological systems.
Right.
The MHRA is actively trying to de-risk the development pathway for companies that want to exclude animals, but they refuse to compromise on human safety to achieve it.
They're building a new highway, but they aren't removing the speed limits.
Exactly.
The other massive regulatory update is the MHRA's public consultation on redefining gene therapy medicinal products, or GTMPs. The current legal definitions they use were written back in 2007.
Which is ancient history in genetics.
Exactly. Just
Yeah.
think about how much gene editing and CRISPR technology has evolved since 2007. The MHRA wants to completely change the classification. They want to classify these therapies based solely on their mechanism of action, rather than requiring them to be biological in origin. What does that actually mean in practice?
It is a direct regulatory response to the explosion of synthetic biology. Today, we have therapies that utilize synthetic or recombinant nucleic acids. We have sequence-specific genome editing tools like CRISPR.
Yeah.
Because these tools might be synthetically printed on a DNA synthesizer in a laboratory rather than harvested from a living biological cell, they technically risk falling outside the old 2007 regulatory definitions of gene therapy.
Oh, I see. A loophole.
A huge loophole. The MHRA is actively closing it. They are stating that if a product alters a human gene, regardless of whether it was harvested from a pig cell or printed synthetically on a computer, it will be regulated cleanly and strictly as a gene therapy.
Regulators were just sprinting to catch up with science fiction becoming science fact. And looking at everything we've covered, it really brings this deep dive full circle.
It really does.
We started by exploring how clinics are utilizing a centrifuge to spin our own blood into a serum that wakes up dormant hair follicles. We look at how fractional lasers and localized plasma injections are completely restoring intimate functional health for oncology patients who previously had no viable options.
Yeah.
We unpacked how focused ultrasound and electromagnetism are physically sculpting muscles and tightening the foundational SMAS layer of the face without a single surgical incision.
And finally, we saw how the highest regulatory bodies in the UK are having to literally rewrite the dictionary on what constitutes a gene therapy and fundamentally alter how we prove human safety just to usher in this new era without causing harm.
Before we wrap up, considering the sheer scale of the sources we just went through, what is the biggest takeaway here for you?
I think it's this. As modern medicine increasingly moves away from foreign silicone implants and systemic, broad-spectrum drugs, and moves aggressively toward utilizing our own harvested fat, our own concentrated blood platelets, and targeted biostimulating energy signals, we are effectively turning our own bodies into personalized, self-contained pharmacies. As these regenerative treatments become entirely indistinguishable from our natural biology, where will we eventually draw the ethical and medical line between natural healing and medical enhancement?
Wow. If the medicine is just you, optimized to its absolute biological peak? It's a profound question. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. It seems the trusty old surgical scalpel might be gathering dust in a museum much sooner than we ever thought. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time.